Good evening, everybody. Once again, this is the UFC 138 post-fight recap with Thunderbird Thunderheart. And tonight, this event, of course, took place in Birmingham, England. And, of course, why am I here? Well, I was out and about, basically, doing other things. But fortunately, of course, I always think ahead. And I always bring my supplies, bring everything else just in case. And voila, I was still out. So, of course, there's sports bars, there are different places I can go to actually see this event. So I happened to just went to a sports bar tonight, and I saw some couple of friends of mine that I've seen there, so that was good. That was good. And so I got to see the event, and it was pretty cool. For it being on Spike TV, the last time being on Spike TV, and of course next week it'll be on Fox, and I'm gonna kind of talk about that a little bit more later. But right now I'm just gonna get to the fights. So here we go. Cariaso versus Vaughan Lee, and the winner is Cariaso, split decision. Now, Chris Cope versus Chain Mills, and this was, of course, Chain Mills' UFC debut, and what an impressive UFC debut, because he was the one that ended up being the winner, Chain Mills, by TKO, a 40-second win. I mean, it didn't take very long at all. I mean, basically, it just started out with strikes, and he just ended up just doing a 1-2 punch on Chris Cope. Basically knocked him down, and then he just no, actually he did the knees and then he punched him, and the guy was getting rocked. He just kept on trying to get up, but he kept on like coming and grinding and pounding him near the ground, but he kept on coming up, kneeing him, and then actually hits him again and just knocks him the hell out. So basically it's through a TKO victory. So congratulations, Chain Mills, on your awesome debut. And Broughton versus Phil DeFries, and the winner is Phil DeFries, unanimous decision. Michihiro Omigawa versus Jason Young, and the winner is Michihiro Omigawa, unanimous decision. And this next one was on John Maguire versus Justin Edwards, and the winner is John Maguire, unanimous decision. I mean, you want to talk about an excellent technique. I mean, first of all, yeah, it just started out with some striking techniques. It started out with Justin Edwards not only throw some good boxing, throw punches in the body and in the face, but he also did a reverse spin side kick and kicked him and actually hit him hard. I thought that John Maguire was in trouble, but he kept, he weathered the storm. He maintained his composure, and then he stopped, the onslaught from happening to him further, and they started taking him to the ground, and actually ended up turning out to be a grappling match, if anything. I mean, sure, there was still some grounding and pounding, but man, I mean, there was so many, throughout basically the whole fight, even though John Maguire did most of the control, yet it was Justin Edwards that still defended. He never got submitted. He didn't really get grounded and pounded too much. But man, I mean, John Maguire just kept having control, Justin Edwards, and then they just keep reversing on each other from, with headlocks, footholds. I mean, they even at one point even tied each other up in footlock, double footlock with each other, trying to submit each other with that, but that wasn't working. And then John Maguire just had so much control. Justin Edwards had a lot of control too in reversing. This was really a chess match, wrestling match. I mean, this was one of the best matches I've seen in all year, the best fights. So, but John Maguire did way more than Justin Edwards. So congratulations, John Maguire, on an awesome victory there. And Cyrille Diabate versus Anthony Perosh, and the winner is Anthony Perosh, submission. Basically what it all boils down to, it first started out as, of course they started out standing. Cyrille Diabate started out with some good strikes, but of course Anthony Perosh would grab him, take him down, and would then start to ground and pound him a little bit, because it was actually a classic striker versus grappling match. I mean, let's put it this way. Anthony Perosh was a grappler. Cyrille Diabate was definitely the striker. And of course, Cyrille could not defend on the ground too well. He did it just a little bit, but and so basically Anthony Perosh had him on the ground for a while until the second round. Then of course during the second round, that's when they started again. This time Anthony Perosh had him on the ground again, basically had him taken down, and Anthony got really, and as soon as he was able to be able to be free from Cyrille Diabate's half guard, he was actually able to get the full mount, and he was actually able to pound him to a point where he actually forced Cyrille to start struggling, trying to worm his way around, but he couldn't do it, and then instead ended up giving Anthony Perosh his back. And then that's when he really started unloading a little bit, until he finally like snaked in the one arms for the choke, and then just slapped on the other one and just cinched it in real tight and leaned his body into it and just forced him to tap out. So congratulations, Anthony Perosh, on an awesome rear naked choke submission victory. And this next one was Terry Etim versus Edward Faaloloto. And the winner is Terry Etim, submission was in 17 seconds. I mean, this was a real comeback story for Terry Etim. I mean, he was injured for about 17 months or more, and then he just came back and started competing again. But man, how this thing started out was simple as this. Edward Faaloloto thought he was going to get aggressive in the heartbeat and stop Terry's rhythm, but Terry just gave him a good knock, good punch, and even like gives him a good leg kick. But at the same time, what really was the beginning and the end was that Terry Etim was able to do a nice spin back kick right towards the side, right towards near the sternum of the chest, but it was also near the solar plex area with the pressure point. So he basically nearly got him on the side, blasted him towards the fence, and then of course Faaloloto thought that he was going to take him down, but of course Terry Etim thought way ahead, jumped right on him aggressively, and just had him wrapped up in a awesome guillotine choke, the greatest guillotine I've seen in the whole year, quite frankly, in my view. I mean, the way he just slapped it on, the way he just climbed upon him like some monkey like he was. But man, I'm telling you, that man must got some kind of monkey medicine or something. I think he should start taking monkey kung fu, because he will really be good at that. As far as Terry Etim is concerned, while mixing it up in MMA as well, I think monkey style would really be excellent for him. But nonetheless, he had a great guillotine choke victory and forced him to tap out in 17 seconds. So congratulations, Terry Etim, on the best guillotine choke I've seen in all year. So awesome, awesome, awesome. And this next bout is, of course, Thiago Alves versus Papy Abedi. And the winner is Thiago Alves submission. This was actually Thiago Alves' first submission victory ever in his MMA career. I mean, normally all the other fights have either been knockouts, TKOs, everything else under the sun but a submission. And he went against a very gamey Papy Abedi. This guy was basically fighting from Sweden. This big buff guy. Sorry, how do I say this? African guy that fights off from there, and he was game tonight. He came straight at Thiago Alves at first, and was actually coming at him, but Thiago Alves kept patience and kept, and then rather than just going in crazy, he picked his shots, and then finally what he was able to do, he was able to actually hit him with his right, then hit him with the left, and then that's when he finally fell down. And that's when Thiago Alves went on top of him and started pounding him, grinding and pounding him, to such a degree that then when he gave Thiago Alves his back, he pounded him again until Thiago said, oh the hell with it. Put a rear naked choke on him, just slapped it on him and tightened it up and just forced him to tap out. So congratulations, Thiago Alves, and now he's back on the winning track. Let's see if he can keep it up from that point forward, because I know that he has lost the last 3 fights, and so now he's back on track. So let's see if he can keep it going. So either which way, Thiago, nice, congratulations. And the next, of course, the co-main event of the evening was Brad Pickett versus Renan Baroa. And basically, the winner, of course, turned out to be a 17-fight win streak for Renan Baroa via submission rear naked choke. I mean, the bottom line is, when this first started, of course, Brad Pickett got me laughing so freaking hard, because he was all wearing, some kind of like I don't know, like some jock strap, looking like some kind of gangster from the 1930s, and reading the newspaper, walking down. I'm not thinking, what the hell is he doing? And obviously that showboating was great showing and everything, but it did not help him with the win. However, I will say this though. I will say this about Brad Pickett though. He came out swinging. It was such a knockout, drag-out fight. His boxing skills were excellent. Renan Baroa I mean, they were swinging and he was going at it too. But the only thing about Brad was that Brad was doing boxing while Renan was actually mixing it up more. In other words, Renan was actually throwing combos, but he was also doing leg kicks. And what was really the beginning and the end too was that he started like throwing a nice knee towards the head of Pickett. Pickett got rocked, and he hit him a couple times. He went to the ground, and then he started pounding on him. But then what happened was when as soon as he was trying to get up, like just like a predator, a cat that pounces on a zebra or what did I say? Oh, a lion. Okay, just imagine like how a lion pounces on a zebra in Africa. How he just goes on his back and just gets on him. Well, that's exactly how Renan got on Pickett. Just got on his back, just like how a predator does. Slaps on a rear naked choke, and then actually turns him so he can actually get it better this time rather than actually staying on top. He actually went on the bottom to just get more leverage, and that's when, of course, Pickett had no choice but to tap out. So great showing on Pickett's part, but Renan Baroa is on a 7-fight win streak, man. Unbelievable action from the bantamweight guys. So congratulations, Renan Baroa. And this guy, I mean, you got to give this guy a next title shot or somewhere down the road against Dominic Cruz at some point, because I'm telling you, I can see him being a champion at some point. And in the main event, Leben versus Mark Munoz. Now this was supposed to be the first non-title match that Dana White decided to put 5-minute rounds. That is usually reserved for a title fight. But I guess they thought this was so important that they decided, you know what, let's experiment with this. Let's just make it a 5-minute round fight for two guys that were not even champions, but they're great fighters. And of course, Leben. And of course, the winner of this was Mark Munoz through TKO, if anything, because what happened was Leben thought that he was going to get knocked Mark Munoz around and everything, but Mark Munoz had one advantage over Leben, and that was his wrestling ability. Yeah, sure, Leben couldn't grapple and everything else too, but right away he just went to the game plan. He stuck with the game plan by taking Leben down. Because he knew that he's not going to outstrike Leben and try to slugfest, but that would have been an idiotic thing to do. So Mark Munoz, of course, followed a plan, took him down, and then Leben, of course, had some good punches and hits on him too. But the truth of the matter is, once Mark Munoz had him ground and pound, and that's when he ended up really hurting Leben, and Leben was even having a hard time breathing. And then through the second round, that's when it started happening again. Of course, Leben couldn't really outstrike him very well, and especially at the point where Mark Munoz busted his eyes so badly that the blood was all running all over the place. I mean, all over Munoz, Leben, all over the freaking mat, for crying out loud. I mean, gee whiz. I mean, and yeah, they tried to wrestle and so forth, but then Mark Munoz just kept on hitting him in the elbows and kept on having ground control really well. Couldn't really get a good submission on him, but that didn't really matter because after round number 2, the doctors, the referees checked up on him, and then actually they stopped it in the second round where the referee asked, if you can't see, I'm gonna have to stop the fight. I have to stop the fight. But needless to say, Leben's a warrior that he is. He said yes, he can see, but the moral of the story was his breathing was not very well. I mean, that was really the moral of the story was, as well as the eye problem. And it got too overbearing for the doctors and the referees and then even his cornermen that they said, no, forget it, enough's enough, and rewarded Mark Munoz the victory, even though it was via referee stoppage before the third round ever began, but it was a TKO victory. So a big, huge win for Mark Munoz in his career. And I heard that he asked this fight. So congratulations, Mark Munoz. And now eyes are going to be open. Eyes are opening now for this guy. I mean, this guy has got to be at least now one of the next up in line for the contender and against Anderson Silva, of course, after Anderson Silva, assuming that when he beats up Chael Sonnen one more time. So, and if that happens like that, then Mark Munoz at least has got to be in line for another first shot. I mean, whether he wins against Anderson Silva or not, but then again, you never know. He probably could be the man that could beat Anderson Silva. Mark Munoz. Not to give his hopes too high, but not to underestimate him either. So, any event, I mean, this was an excellent event. If you see a bunch of people passing by, that's because there's a little party next door. So, I just kind of went in around here when it was a party, and obviously they're paying too much attention to what's going on, and they're not paying attention to me, which is good. So I won't be bothered. And I have this question. Now that tonight was the last night for UFC to be featured on Spike, which was actually where it first started, which is actually the first network that gave UFC a real chance at really being in the mainstream. Now they're moving to Fox, if anything, for the next chapter in their lives. So I just want to ask you guys something, and you guys can leave me your comments, your video responses, and things like that. What do you feel, how do you guys feel about the move of UFC going from the major network of Spike TV now going towards Fox? What do you guys feel about it? You guys can tell me from whatever perspective, from financial perspective, or whatever other perspective that you can guys give. So basically, how do you guys feel about UFC moving now from Spike to Fox now? How do you feel about that? What do you have to say about it? I'm interested in getting your comments and your feedbacks and your video responses to anything. So go ahead and just shoot it on by. So, in any event, this was a good night overall. It was actually very relaxing, but yet the events were good. It featured a lot of excellent newcomers that are coming up, and so these newcomers need to be keep an eye on these guys. These guys they're hungry, and then they're coming up. So, any event, I'm gonna get going. The night's still young, so take care, everybody. Be safe, and have a great weekend. Healing, it is all that is.